Hey everybody, Hunter coming back at you again. Hope everybody's doing good out there in hobby land and making some progress on your projects and having fun doing it. I wanted to do this quick little tutorial here today on a question that came up on one of my videos. And it was, how do I go about shaving molded in details off of models and smoothing it out? So I'm going to do a fairly quick tutorial on this and show you some of the procedures that I use and the tools that I use to do it. There is several different scenarios that you can get into shaving details off of a model. Sometimes if you want to shave a detail and it's right close to another detail that you want to keep, you have to kind of think about how you want to do it and what, the best plan of attack. But just to give you a basic understanding of how I shave details off, it's pretty straightforward. So I'll pan the camera down here and we'll get into it. Okay, what I have is just a part out of the parts box. This is actually a simulated steel coil. It's out of one of the trailer kits from AMT. So that's what we'll be using to do the tutorial on. And I have a X-Acto knife here with a chisel blade in it. It's tapered on one end and very sharp. You need to keep these very sharp. If you get a little chip or something in that blade, make sure that you definitely change that blade out and get a new one. Because if you're shaving details with it and that blade's not sharp, you're going to create more damage than you want to. The next tool that we're used for this is number 11 blade in the X-Acto knife. I have a black Sharpie. You can use red. You can use pretty much any color you want to, as long as it shows up on the color of the part that you're doing. And we have a couple sanding sticks here. So what I'm going to be doing is right across the top of this spool here, there is a molded in line that's raised up. So normally how I go about doing something like that is I will take the Sharpie and I will come in right beside that molded in line or molded in raised section that's on here. And I'll draw the Sharpie right down the side of it. And usually make it a little bit wider than the raised part itself, just to kind of give you a guide here. Now what I do that for is I know if all that Sharpie line comes off of there that I'm back down to the surface that I want to be at. I don't want to be too much lower than that. And in the case of this thing is round, so you want to try to keep it round and not have a flat spot in it. So on this here, one way that you can go about shaving this off is basically taking the number 11 and I hold it just like that and pretty much just come in and lightly shave that down. Now the one thing when you're doing this you want to be aware of, if this part was all flat, make sure you're keeping an eye on the point of your blade and this part of the blade back here. Because if this was flat and you get a little bit out of line, you'll gouge into the part back here, or you'll stick the point down in it and create a cut in the part. You don't want to do that. So be very aware of where your cutting edge is at all times. But yeah, all we're doing there is we're just sliding the knife across that raised detail. And you don't want to go too deep into this. And like I say, I've got the Sharpie line there. So if you happen to go a little bit too deep, it will take the Sharpie line away and you know to stop at that point and don't go back over that. But this is like anything else. It takes a little bit of experience and a little bit of practice to do this and to get efficient at it. I can pretty much take this off in one pass because I've done it so much. But there we have it shaved down, and from that point, I didn't shave it all the way across. Actually, let me go ahead and shave that all the way across, because there's another one here, and I'll show you this blade on how to work on that. So I'm going to go ahead and shave this all the way across here. And we'll get rid of all the Sharpie line and everything. Now, right there at the very end, you can see where the line got a little bit wider than the raised detail. That's what I was talking about watching with the Sharpie, because you know at that point you are getting down into the point of taking the material off where you don't want to. So that's why I put the Sharpie line down there. Now the next thing that I do is just on this here is I'll come in with my sanding stick, and basically with light pressure I'll roll the sanding stick. Since this is a round part, just keep it flat down, fairly short strokes on this, and just kind of keep the sanding stick moving back and forth, but you also want to roll it with the part too, so you don't create a flat spot in it. And I'm not using a real heavy grit on this. I've got a heavier grit on this side here that I can flip it over. Sometimes it's a lot better just to go in and just spend a little bit of time working it down with a lighter grit. That way you don't have all the sand scratches to worry about having to sand out. Because the more you sand on this one spot, the more you're going to make this out of round. You know, now another way that you could do this for the guys that are really experienced, you know, or have the tools, you could actually chuck this in a lathe, and you could cut that right off of there and turn the diameter down a little bit, and you'll be perfectly round. But this works pretty good here, and as you can see, I've taken that all the way off, all the Sharpies off. But if you notice, I'm rolling the sanding stick around the part, and like I say, that just keeps you from putting a flat spot in it. And usually I'll go back with a finer grit. And just clean the surface up with the finer grit. That gets a lot of the sand scratches out that the heavier grit put in there. And pretty much that's what we have right there. You can see that that raised line is gone. You can see where it was right across from here and right across from there. It's not there anymore, and this part is still actually round and looks pretty decent. That's one technique. Now, to do any finish work on this, what you can do is, since you have it here, I can actually feel a little bit of the line there. So what I would do is I would spray either a guide coat of paint or primer over this, let that dry, and then come back in and sand it. And if your line is still raised, that will be the first thing that the paint or the primer will come off of. So you know that you need to shave that down a little bit more. Once you think you've got it right, then go ahead and repeat the primer or paint process and sand it again. And once it doesn't take the paint or the primer off of that line down through there, then you know you've got it down where you want it. Okay, that's that procedure. Now another procedure I use is this chisel blade on the X-Acto knife. And you can do this one of two ways. You can turn it so that the bevel is actually up. That's another thing that takes experience to do it with the bevel up, because as you push the knife forward, it wants to keep going deeper into the part. So you have to be very aware of where that blade is and how deep that you're going down into the part. So I'm not going to draw the lines on this one, but if you're using this style blade here to do it, you know, draw the lines on there. That's something that I don't all the time draw these lines on there, because like I say, I have the experience now to pretty much know how deep I need to cut a part down and when it disappears. But for anybody that's starting out, the beginners, you know, use a tool like this, because it'll come in very handy for you and it'll create a better model for you. But like I say, we have the bevel turned up on the blade now, and that's one way that you can do it. Now, another way that you can do it is turn that bevel down. And when you turn the bevel down, you can kind of come along and slide that right along it, and it won't tend to want to cut into it as deep. Once it kind of gets to a certain depth in that cut, it kind of evens itself out, and it'll slide right across the material and cut that off of there. So either way, you know, bevel up or bevel down, If you're worried about gouging into your material too bad, definitely do it with the bevel down. It'll save you a lot of trouble. And make sure that you keep this finger, index finger, or any of your other fingers away out of the line of this knife, because when this thing gets into you, it's worse than a number 11 blade. And it will cut you open, and number 11 blades don't hurt all that bad unless you cut real deep into yourself. But these chisel blades they're pretty bad. So I've got that shaved down there. I'll come in now and just kind of roll this around a little bit with the sanding stick. Same procedure we did on the other side. And that actually come out pretty well. But like I say, if you're just beginning or whatever, definitely use the Sharpie and, you know, outline your raised detail that you're trying to take off. And that way you know when you have just the detail off and not the actual surface that you want to leave. So I've got this cleaned up now. It looks pretty decent from here. Like I say, the next thing would be the paint and primer process. Sand it, check it, see what you got. But hopefully that gives you an idea on how I go about shaving off raised details. And if you have any questions or concerns on the tutorial, just leave me a message. I'll be more than glad to get back to you. So I'm going to let you go on that today. Like always, thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.